Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Unplugged. We're a little short this week with no Darren Parkin. If you can hear us and see us, all right. I know there's been some tech issues with our platform, but let us know. Let us know in the comments if you can hear and see us, just so that we can make sure, and then we'll let everyone know on socials that we're live and ready. Let's give it a second, see if anyone can drop a comment in and let us know if they can hear us. Anyone? Oh, George.
There we go.
Hey, George. Thanks for letting us know. Excellent. Good to know that everything's working, apparently, for now. Welcome back to Unplugged, Saints Therapy, live and in session. As you can see, Darren Parkin is away. He's got a sick little girl at home. So we do wish her and the Parkin family all the best and a speedy recovery for Amelia. In Parko's place is the return of someone who you've all been asking for a long time. He's going to tell you how he really feels. And if we want a week where we're going to hear some brutal honesty, this is probably the week. So, Philip Dalidakis, welcome back to Unplugged.
Great to be back, to come off the bench, although not under these circumstances. So, Parko, to you and your little girl and obviously your wife, we wish you all the very best, speedy and quick return to form. But nice to be here nevertheless.
And H, as we welcome you into the show, as always, I guess to start off with the bleeding obvious, we were putting together this run sheet for our show tonight. A little bit late, a little bit unprepared, a little bit disorganized, but I thought your one addition to the run sheet was very apt. Just big capital letters WTF. How are you feeling, mate?
Oh, pretty much exactly that. I've got to say I was lucky in a way and very unlucky in a way. I play basketball Thursday nights, so I watched the first quarter and thought, I'm glad I'm getting out of here. So went and played basketball and got back, and I thought, no, I'm going to just have a look at the score, and looked at the score and went, okay, yep, no, I'm leaving this for another day. And yeah, I skipped through the game in the end, which was good. I was able to fast forward through bits and pieces, and yeah, it was just, I don't know, chosen tortured actually going through it on the weekend, actually choosing to watch it and it was, yeah, not something we've seen almost since they did that to us 2 years ago. And obviously it wasn't quite as bad as that night, but as many people point out, it was 1 point off Ross Lyon's worst result for us. It was pretty ordinary, and we went in that game thinking we're up against a team who's struggling, a team that we probably should beat, a team that we've beaten them pretty convincingly last year. They haven't changed all that much. If anything, they're maybe missing a couple of players, but the younger brigade's picked up a little bit. They're going all right. We've probably about the same point, but yeah, we're missing a couple of players. Our young kids coming along well. So it should be pretty similar, but yeah, on the night, they a mile above us, miles above. And you wonder how much of that 3 games in 11 days does affect the players. It's pretty rough the way it was fixtured, but yeah, you've got to do that occasionally, and we clearly just weren't ready for the game. And I mean, we coming out late in the last few games, and yeah, this game we decided to come out in the last 5-10 minutes or something, and that was about it. So yeah, overall it's a really, really ordinary game.
In hindsight, I think we all got that email from the president midweek last week. I think it was the Wednesday night or whatever it was before the game on Thursday. In hindsight, it was a little bit of a premonition, I think, and maybe getting in a bit early. Maybe they knew during the week that they were flat, that they were a few tired boys, some tired legs. But Phil, I guess we saw each other. We ran into each other in the bar at quarter time last week, and I think in my football following history, that is the only time in nearly 40 years of watching this football club that I've been at a game and never actually made it to my seat, because by the time I got a beer, we were a couple of goals down, and I thought I'll just wait till quarter time, and then we were 7 goals down. I thought I'll wait till halftime, and then it was all over. So I just kept drinking, and for all those people out there, drink responsibly, because I didn't on Thursday night. But Phil, your thoughts of last week?
I think the less time we spend on the game, the better. I'm not sure that there was a lot that we can take out of it, save for the performance of a couple of the young kids, Garcia in particular. For those that may not be quite across all of the stats, he was the equal first player in the team for score involvements, and he was the top-ranked player in the team for tackles. Now, it's kind of actually funny because I think, and I'm sure we'll get onto this, but I think Darcy Wilson deserved the nomination the week before, and I think that the young guy from West Coast probably deserved it this week instead of the other way around. But I tell you what, Garcia can't be too far away in really what was his first full game of football. People talk about silver linings. I thought he was a big silver lining for us, and I think he's got a serious future ahead with the club.
It's interesting, isn't it? Hugo Garcia doesn't get the plaudits, doesn't get the headlines, at least outside of the Saints fan base. But he's doing all the things that, like you said, make you think that he does have a future in this game. He runs hard, he tackles hard, he hits the contest, he drives forward. He's really impressive. But you don't hear a lot of people talking about him outside of the footy club, do you?
Well, he's only, second game in. So I think it will take some time for the footy world to catch on to what we're seeing. And that's okay. You don't expect the rest of the world to watch every team as closely as its fan base. But, you know, he's got a lot to offer. And, you know, I'm excited when Schoenmakers gets his opportunity as well. I think that the draft intake of the last 3 years is going to be what holds this club together for the next decade. And, you know, credit to the guys at the club that have been involved in those picks.
For someone who watched the replay, I mean, I couldn't bring myself to do it at all. It's the second time this year that I couldn't bring myself to watch a replay. And watching, like I said, watching on the screen from the bar, it just looked like we were running in quicksand. It was like, you know, pre-season training drills on the beach, you know, in the ankle deep water or in the soft sand and all that sort of stuff. It was really hard to watch. I mean, during the week we heard Ross talk at his presser, talk about they just got it wrong. That you know, they made tactical errors in the box in the pre-game, tweaked the team defense, and they just got it wrong. But what did you make of it watching the replay?
Lack of effort, accountability, basically just letting them do what they wanted. That was all part of that. I mean, there was a pretty damning footage of from behind the air goals of in the first quarter. You had a little guy running wild against us. Waitman kicking the 3 goals in the first quarter. There was one stage where the ball's about 70 out from their goal and Stocker's standing next to him. He just peels off. Stocker keeps looking, goes towards the ball. It's straight over his head. And Waitman gets an easy goal. It was just looking at it going, if you're going to make that sort of decision, you've got to be committed to it and you've got to get the ball. You either stay on your man or you get the ball. And he was just caught in the middle of nowhere. And it just happened numerous times from what happened on the night. The ball would hit the ground and we would be turning slower than them and being second to the ball after it hits the ground. We just never there in front, never first to it, never getting. I mean, we talk about being high amount, I guess, tackles from a few of the players, but that's because they were the ones who actually had to chase. They're the ones that actually had to get there because someone else didn't get there first. Then these couple of players who actually put those efforts in had to be the ones there to getting these tackles.
It was almost a carbon copy of the game that we played against the Western Bulldogs last year, only in reverse.
Yeah, I'd probably, and going back again to the other game against them the year before. It's flipping back and forward as you're saying there. It hasn't been seems like it hasn't been a really close result with them for a while now. Probably the final was probably that last one. So yeah, it's, as I was saying, yes, look, 3 games in 11 days, but we're still got to put a team out there who can compete on that night. If there's players who are tired and done and that, maybe you've got to bring in a couple of fresh legs to play that game. Bring in a couple of players who are ready to go. Try to find out which ones who isn't ready there, who basically isn't ready to play on that night. Because, I mean, you can be half a team down and like in the way of players that are overdone. But as soon as it gets a few more than that, then you're in real trouble because, yeah, I mean, they all just look so tired, and it was just that top few that on the night put in all that effort, but they had to put in much more effort than what they probably would have had to if just all the others below them lifted just 10, 20% more. And it goes right down the list, and it makes it harder on all those other players.
But just on that age, right, if you have a look at the injury list, there are probably 5 guys on the injury list that are genuine top 22 players in the club. So, and then there's the 6th in Paddy Dow that we all think will be, but is yet untested in the red, white and black. So the question is, if we were to have rested players, given that we're already without 6 players that we think will be in the top 23, I'm not sure how deep our list then genuinely goes when we've already got 3, first rounders from or 3 draftees from last year playing or on the emergency list already. So I think that there are limitations in the ability to rotate players even at this early stage of the season. And hopefully over the coming 4 or 5 weeks, we'll get players back. And I've got to say, the one thing I've been really happy with in the lead up to Friday night's game is the fact that the club has not rushed Paddy Dow into the first team. And they've said, go back and go to Sandy and just get some run into your legs and hopefully find some form so that when he comes into the first 18, he comes in with some confidence. And, I think Ross said that in his presser this week, where he talked about the long-term future of these players at the club and making sure that we get that right too.
Well, one of the other things was that Ross said was that we had 7 players under 21 on Thursday night. Only 3 clubs were in that sort of conversation. It was us, West Coast and Gold Coast. And we know, even Ross said, we know how those 2 clubs are going and the journey that those 2 clubs are on. And yet the same sort of conversation or the same narrative isn't used for our club. And, obviously we cop a pounding and rightly so. We got slammed for it. We were awful. There's no, beating around the bush. We were awful and we deserve to cop that from all angles. There are explanations. It's not necessarily justification, but there are explanations as to why that happened. But I think ultimately, outside of everything else, we are a really, really young squad. We are a really, really young team. And to what you just said, Phil, that a lot of those young kids might not have been playing on Thursday night had we had a full list. Had we had a lot of these guys ready to go and fit and healthy and playing, maybe they would have been, training the house down anyway. But I do wonder if you've got guys like, Filippo, who's, out of form. He's certainly not the same dynamic impact player that we saw for a lot of last season. Garcia's probably not in the lineup if we've got a full healthy list. There's probably a few of these guys that potentially are getting an extra chance or an extra run because there aren't a whole lot of guys ready and able to come in. And I think we are seeing that starting to turn. And that will start to turn over the next few weeks as that injury list continues to get better. Obviously, Paddy Dow is going to run out for Sandy this week. Hunter Clark and Mason Wood both played in the scratch match. I think Ben Patton also played. It's probably a month earlier than we might have expected for him, and it does seem like the recovery is coming a little bit quicker for some of these guys, but it is sometimes, I think, the expectation that we're going to be competitive week on week on week is great to have, but it's probably not always realistic with a group this young, Phil.
No, I agree. And again, come back to silver linings. For me, the young kids is a silver lining. And I've got to say also, Jack Steele, he's back to his healthy best. And, I find that pretty exciting. I think that he's done a great job this season so far. I think Seb Ross has found form from 3-4 years ago and seems to be performing at a consistently high level once more. We're missing Brad Crouch. There's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I see Zach Jones do something really clever, he then does 2 or 3 things that remind me why he at times is a bit of a whipping boy for the club supporter base. But, he also provides a point of difference. And we've spoken about that many times on previous episodes about making sure that our midfield's not one-paced. And that's the other thing, right? Credit to Ross and the team. In the face of the adversity of the team and the Doggies scoring quickly and aggressively against us last week, they were putting guys into the middle to give them that experience and that time, looking at and playing on players of the caliber of McRae and Bontempelli. And that can only help us when you've got such a young team around you. Windhager, right, he's still relatively young in his football progression. Mitch Owens, the same. There's a lot of upside, and I'm not trying to encourage people or excite the fan base and trying to look only at the silver linings. But yes, would love to think that we're all able to compete for a premiership year on year. I'm not sure that anyone legitimately or genuinely thinks we're a premiership chance unless we've got an extraordinarily healthy list at the pointy end of the season and everybody else doesn't. So having a look at the games that we're getting into kids and also the way that the teams are being planned. And this has been spoken about in the media. I'm not sure that we've spent time talking about it on the pod, but people need to remember that the club has to plan right now for the entrance of the Tassie Devils into the competition. And so we need to try and get as much top-end talent over the next 2 or 3 years that we can and be there or thereabouts competing at that point when all the draft concessions come in for the Devils. Because if we're not, then we're consigned to another decade of mediocrity. And I don't think we are, and I think that's credit to the club's planning.
Absolutely. And just in the comments, George says, yes, great point, Phil. The recruiting has been great. Dom Orlando says, why can't we just expect that with a younger team, we are going to just not be on? We are quick to attack club and players. Max King, the week versus GWS is probably a good example of that. But if you do have questions, comments, feel free to drop it in. Obviously, we'll try and get to as many of them as possible. It does look like H's camera has frozen. H, you still there?
It's just the two of us, Nick. And I just want to confirm that the George that's commenting is neither my father or my son.
Well, we'll see. We'll see about that. We'll have to check into the financial transactions post.
But it's great. It's a great photo of H. He's looking pensive and thoughtful, and that he's really considering what his next contribution is going to be.
It does look. He does look very thoughtful. He looks ready to. But he's just messaged and said that he can still hear and see us. We can see him in some respect, but we can't hear him at all. So H, maybe jump out and jump back in again and see if that'll help. In the meantime, if you are watching this live, thank you. Please hit subscribe on YouTube. It'd mean a lot to us. And if you're not watching this live, if you are listening on the podcast, this will be up tomorrow, obviously. But we'd love it if you could go to YouTube and hit subscribe. If you could go to our other socials, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter, X, TikTok, or whatever it is, that we'd love it if you could jump on and give us a like or a subscribe or a follow or a comment, and hopefully a rating wherever you are. That'd be great, and we would appreciate it. We might just put a bow on the Bulldogs game. H, you back? Happy, healthy,
I believe
fit?
so.
Yeah, there you are.
As I said, I'm sitting there listening to what Phil was saying, and I was just about to reply, and not sure what happened. I was perfect. It was perfect at my end. So,
Well, it depends, H. I'll decide whether what you had to say about what I was saying was perfect or not. Go.
I can't remember now. It's the wisdom.
Phil,
the wisdom is better stuff that no one's isn't it? So,
Phil, George does say that he's a bit older than you, Phil, and then he says our kicking and handballs were really off too. But putting a bow on the Bulldogs game, some votes. We haven't got votes from Darren this week, so we'll have to update, I guess, totals and whatnot next week. But Phil, do you want to give your 10 votes?
Yeah, I was probably a little bit stingy coming away from the game. I didn't really want to give many people votes at all because I'm not sure that many people actually would put their hand up and go, I feel comfortable taking them. And that's hopefully a good sign. But I've given 3 to Brad Hill. I think for the second game running, I thought he was outstanding. He continued to try and make the play. You could see there were times that he was running in circles, but he was running in circles because there was nobody in front of the ball that was pushing hard for him to be able to pass the ball to. And when you're at the ground, you can see that. When you're at home on TV, it's a little bit harder. So 3 to Hill. I thought Garcia absolutely deserved 3 as well. To be in his second game, his first full game, and to have equal top score involvements, but also the most tackles for a young kid. I couldn't ignore that, and I have given him overs on that basis alone. I've given 2 to Windy. I thought he was he was somebody that was a bit of a point of difference for us, but the fact was one guy in the middle can't do it all. And then I gave single votes to Bonner. People that have followed me on social media know that I'm a big rap for Bonner. I know that he had a lot of turnovers a few games back, but he had turnovers because he was trying to do something with the ball. He was trying to create the play. He was trying to make something happen. And he still scored over 1,000 meters that game, despite having, I think it was 17 turnovers. So when you've got those kind of stats, that's going to happen at times. But he's in the last 2 games, he's cleaned up his disposal efficiency, and also I think his run off the half back has been super important. And then I gave 1 to young Darcy Wilson. His continued improvement is exciting. He had the most kilometres of any player on the ground, which is pretty remarkable for a first year player. The club has had massive raps on this kid's ability to run, and all I can say is may you spend more and more time with Robert Harvey. And this kid also has a really bright future, and I'm wrapped in. I think his disposal is pretty good as well. So I've just gone the 5 players, but that's how I saw the game.
I think that's pretty fair. H, how about you?
Yeah, went pretty skinny with the votes as well. It wasn't a lot to choose from. I mean, I could have maybe snuck in another play with 1 here or there, but that, yeah, not what I could do. But I mean, gave 1 to Wilkie. I mean, he got absolutely hammered on the night. Basically, almost a lone soldier down back at times when you look at it, and it could have been a whole lot worse if he didn't put in the effort he did. And I looked at one thing, he had 13 1%ers on the night, and that's a big number. He was just throwing himself at what he had to, and yeah, the effort just was not rewarded for what he did. So yeah, for just for the effort he had to put in down there, and pain that was put onto him. It wasn't a fun night, I'm sure, down there. As Phil said, Bonner, he did nothing wrong on the night either. Provided at least something getting out of the back line, and only missed the target one time. So yeah, he's turned it well around the last few weeks. Less turnovers in the last 3 weeks or whatever it was since he had the day that he had all those turnovers. So he's certainly found what we brought him in for. To Garcia, fantastic. I mean, he probably should have got the nom ahead of Wilson when you think about it. I reckon he had a much bigger impact on the game, a much bigger work towards the team, gave us a bit more on the night. I was thinking Wilson's probably going to have another game where he's going to get a nom, but yeah, Garcia, I reckon, probably should have deserved it this week. It was a little bit tough. Hopefully, I hope really that he gets another game where he plays that well again and gets it, because if all of a sudden he doesn't play many more games for the rest of the season or something like that and he misses out, it's going to be a real missed opportunity for him, because that was a really, really good game from a second gamer. And 3 I gave to both Hill and Windhager. I mean, yeah, they did as much as they could on the night. They actually provided a bit of ball inside, a bit of grunt, and yeah, I mean, as I said, they didn't have a lot of help behind them, as did a few other players. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to give. I mean, I could have given Hill 5 and knocked a couple of others off as well, because at times he felt like it was the only one given a sort of anything. It was just, because of this voting system, you got to give the 10. But yeah, I was able to, I guess, spread a couple more out in the end. But yeah, it wasn't easy, I guess, finding many to give them to.
It was funny just on that. Phil, you and I spoke earlier in the week about the potential for it to be the first time that we don't give out the full 10 votes because potentially there weren't that many options. But mine are pretty similar. I gave one to Darcy Wilson. Obviously nice to see him get the nomination. But yeah, I agree with both of you guys. It probably wasn't his best game, and he's probably deserved it more from other games. And this one was more about the body of work. I think we've seen him put together, six really good games before this one. And he's going to be a player. He's an athlete and a footballer. And quite often we'll see blokes that are drafted that are one or the other, and very rarely both. So he's really impressive. Looks like he's got a good head on his shoulders as well. And really looking forward to see him improve and develop over the next couple of years as well. I gave one vote to Tim Embry. I just thought for someone, we have kind of given him a bit of flack over the last few weeks, looking for him to stand up and do his thing a little bit more. And I think finally, he didn't have that many opportunities, but when the ball did get down there, I think he made those entries count. I think he only had 10 or 11 touches, but 4 marks, 3 goals, hit the scoreboard and played his role. I gave one vote to Garcia and Bonner. Yeah, another really solid week from Garcia. I thought he was very good. I think Bonner's still developing. I think he's got a skill set that we don't have a lot of in our footy club, and still trying to find his best position in this team. And I wonder if Ben Patton was in, if Mason Wood was in, if Jimmy Webster was in, if Jack Sinclair plays all season, doesn't miss the first week or first couple of weeks. What does Riley Bonner look like in this team? Is he even in the best 22 or 23? I'm not sure. But I think that he is playing a role. I think he's been valuable. And he keeps trying, like you said, Phil. I gave one vote to Jack Steele. You're right. He does look stronger and fit and healthy properly. I do want to see him continue to take that step with his leadership. I think he's continuing to get back to where he was a couple of years ago before that initial shoulder injury. He's getting there, but he's certainly miles ahead of where he was this time last year and where we've seen him in the last probably 2 years with that injury. And then the 2 best players on the ground, like you both have said, or just about. Marcus Windhager, I gave 2 votes. I thought he was a little bit of a lone hand in terms of what he was able to do through the middle in his run and carry. In terms of in and under, was one of the few guys that didn't look like they were running on quicksand, and was a bit on top of the ground. And to see him so fit and strong and healthy and playing good footy consistently is really promising. And I think again he's another one that we've found a winner with Windy, and really looking forward to seeing how that develops with more midfield time and what he's able to achieve and accomplish in the middle. And Brad Hill, I thought, was clearly our best on ground in terms of trying to make something happen, and just trying to drive forward and make a difference. A lot of the time we were on the back foot, and it felt like the only time that we ever really tried to do something and tried to make something and be proactive was when the ball was in Brad Hill's hands. And I've been really impressed with Brad Hill pretty much this whole season so far, and his ability to do that, even when he hasn't had as much of the ball, but just continuing to push and be proactive and try and get others involved and make things happen. Because there have been, a few times where we've been on the back foot and we've been defending hard and just trying to stay in it. And he's one of those few guys that isn't necessarily just trying to stay in it, but trying to get us back into it and push forward and make something happen. Our weekly awards, the Jason Blake Award for those new listeners, those who potentially don't get the credit that others might, or that deserve a little bit more credit, and the Shannon Knoll Lift Award for those who need to lift. I'm just going to kick off here and say there weren't many for the Jason Blake Award that didn't get credit, because I think just about anyone who put in any sort of average to above average performance is getting credit this week, because they were the point of difference, and just about everybody needs to lift. So I think the whole club and coaching staff is on the board for the Shannon Knoll Award. But H, what have you got?
I mean, we've got to pretty much split it up into, you'd give Jason Blake to the young kids. They're out there trying. They're out there giving us what they can. They're inexperienced. They shouldn't be the ones leading the way, but yet a few of them are. And then you flip that completely the other way and go, well, the ones that need to lift are the senior players. They are the ones who should be showing us how, or showing the young kids, leading the way for them, showing how to play, well, how we're going to play the game. But the roles are just completely reversed at the moment, and that's what needs to be changing. You need to have your senior players playing great football and your youngsters tagging onto them. I mean, we're not expecting them to be the best on ground. They shouldn't be. Then, when that happens, this is the kind of result you will get. I mean, you'll get one out of the box every now and then from a kid or something, but it shouldn't be, I guess, week in, week out. If we get that sort of service both ways again this week, then Port Adelaide could make quite a mess of us.
Nakaruchi in the comments says everyone gets the Knoll, but I'd make Zach collect the trophy on behalf of the team. Philip, every week, win, lose, or draw, I'll get a text from you. I think this might be your favorite part of the show, is the Jason Blake and the Shannon Knoll Awards. What have you got for us this week?
So we'll start with the Shannon Knoll Award.
Sure.
I was a little bit surprised to see H give a vote to Cal Wilkie, because he's my nomination for the Shannon Knoll Award this week. And that is because he sets such a high standard for himself and his performances. He's an All-Australian defender, and we need more out of him, not necessarily just in the position he plays, but in marshalling the troops and providing that leadership through the back as well. And I think that he's a tremendous player. We're very lucky to have him. And it's just because we should expect more. And I bet you if we had him on interview this week, he'd be the first one to put his hands up and say he expects more of himself. So that's the only reason I'm going that way. Although I've got to say that I think, as you indicated, it could have gone to any number of about 15 players. I'd also probably put an asterisk on Ryan Burns. I think his first couple of games this season were really good. The problem is that the last 4 or 5 haven't been. And I think he's one of those players that is at the moment right on the edge and lucky that we've got an injury list, which has seen him maintain a spot on the list in the 18 or the 2023 as they're named. I really like him. I think he adds a lot, and I think he's courageous as get out. And so I think we're better with him in the team, but I think some of his decision making and disposal needs to improve. And I hope it does, because I think, as I said, when he's up and about, St Kilda's up and about. That's the Shannon Knoll. Jason Blake, I've got to say, and again, I've indicated this already, he's becoming a bit of a favourite of mine. So I put it out there that there is some bias, but I'm going to go with Bonner. And it was literally almost a dead heat between himself and Liam Stocker, another young guy that I've really loved everything that he's done since he's come to the club. But I'm going to give it to Bonner because I just think the way he keeps turning up and performing in light of the ridiculous pasting that some of our fan base gave him is just a tremendous credit to him and his internal fortitude for doing so. So for him, I don't think there's a higher honour that we can bestow than to give him the Jason Blake Award.
Yeah, it's interesting here with it. We've both praised one defender and put down another one opposite. I've said that I didn't think Stocker was too accountable for his player. He had 3 kicked on him in the first quarter. And yeah, that's just the game it was, though. It's just a game where you sort of picked up on certain things, but yeah, it's a tough one to judge last week.
Unlike you two young whippersnappers, I'm a very old bloke. And let me tell you, with the way that the ball was coming into the Doggies forward line, as hard and as fast and as often as it was, I reckon just quietly, I might have been able to kick 1 or 2 goals on the St Kilda defence, because seriously, it was like a tidal wave after tidal wave. And that's because there was no pressure up the ground. And Ross said that in his presser. And Nick, you said that earlier today as well, that in terms of the work that the club had done, we were seen, and I think the words you used were the exact same words that Ross used in his presser, that we sat off the Dogs. And when you do that and you give time and space to people like Bontempelli and McRae, they are going to hit 9.9 times out of 10 the footballer that they're kicking it to.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that we just, obviously we weren't there. We weren't covering the ground. We weren't able to put pressure on, and B, like you said, we just sat off them. We got it wrong in terms of the planning and preparation. And Ross used the words, we were passive in defense. We weren't making things happen. We weren't manning up. We weren't covering players. We weren't watching the zone. We weren't doing any of those things. And yeah, it's a very, very rough watch. And I'm looking forward to seeing a bunch of new players come in over the next fortnight.
I've got a late entrant for the Jason Blake Award, and that's Scott, who came down from Sydney for the game and then had to sit through the game next to me in the stands. And he probably deserves an award for having to listen to the drivel that I kept on with for the whole night. And he's a big fan of the pod. He likes you, Nick, and I don't know why. So clearly, sometimes his judgment is a bit impaired, but nevertheless, he's a good guy, and he'd be back in Newcastle now, listening to the show, and I hope that next time he comes down to watch a game live, that it's a better result.
Well, we had a bet before the show on who was going to take the first pot shot at one another, and I think you just lost that bet, Phil.
Well, I'm happy to bet against myself, because when I bet against myself, I get to buy Nick lunch, which means that I get to spend more time with a quality guy.
That's very nice of you to say. That probably does it for the Bulldogs game. It was a hard watch. It was a hard one to talk about, because it was just about as bad a performance as we've seen since Ross has been back at the club. It's right up there with those losses to Essendon and the Bulldogs a couple of years ago that were infuriating, frustrating, depressing, etc. At this point in the show, normally we would throw to an interview that we've done. Obviously, we're live this week, and so we won't do that live. But we have finally gotten around to fixing up and producing and editing an interview that we did late last year with big boy Ben McAvoy, and really looking forward to sharing that one with you guys in the next couple of days. So that'll be up on YouTube. It'll be up on the podcast channel. Really good chat, H. Do you remember that one from late August?
A little bit, yeah. Obviously, I'll get onto it and remember what we asked him, sort of thing. But yeah, I remember it was pretty good. It was a couple of issues internet wise and that sort of thing, but otherwise, I mean, we're copying again tonight, it seems. But yeah, it was a good chat with him.
It was a great chat. He's a typical country lad, loves farming. As soon as footy was over, he'd get back to the country, get back to the farm. He said he bought a farm, and when he was playing, he couldn't wait to go and work on the farm and get out of footy. So whenever he got a chance, he'd get out there. We did also ask him, just cheekily, whether he would start a club with peak Luke Hodge or peak Nick Riewoldt. And I thought the answer was very interesting, which maybe gives it away. But moving right along to this week's game, Friday night, the Adelaide Oval, Port Adelaide. We don't have a good run. We haven't had a good record against Port in recent times. It feels like ever, really. We haven't had a good record against Port. Obviously, as we've talked about, the injury list is looking a bit better. Paddy Dow comes into standy for his first game of the year. As we mentioned, Hunter Clark, Mason Wood, Ben Patton all played in the scratch match on the weekend. We talked about it last week, but the inability to fixture and schedule, VFL games or VFL buys in weeks where, it kind of lines up with what the seniors are doing has been really frustrating. And to have two buys in the space of 4 weeks, was it 3 weeks even, is really frustrating and must be so tough for the club to manage. But it does sound like they got through the scratch match. They were able to get some run into some of those guys that haven't played for a while, which is good to see. But Port got thumped. They started well last week. They're a really good team. They started well and they had a bad loss. They just gave it away. They fell away in the second half, got overrun, got outplayed, outcoached, just about out everything. But they are a good team and they're going to want to bounce back. And on the flip side, Ross talked about it today, that we're keen to get our energy back. And they've been vibrant, I think was the word that he used, vibrant in the club this week. They know that they're in a safe space. They can, they're going to make mistakes. They're a young group, and what they have to do is learn from it and get better each week. So that's really what we're looking for. Dan Butler injury is frustrating. It's just another hamstring injury that. H, I can see you shaking your head, and I know why you're shaking your head, and I kind of agree with you. But it's more the fact that it's another hamstring injury, and it's a long-term hamstring injury as well. It's the club can't catch much of a break in that regard at the moment, but it is good to see that injury list starting to get better. But Max King obviously on the list, hopefully ready to come back this week. Dougal Howard's a probable in, depending on what you've been hearing and seeing. But H, what are you thinking this week?
We've got to have looked during the week at what Collingwood did. They shut down some key players. They beat them at areas of the game that Port have been really good in. They just made they almost played a different game in the second half. They made it hard for Port Adelaide to do what they've been so good at all year. And they're a really good side, but Collingwood made them look second rate. And that's basically what it is. They're one of those teams that if they get on a run, they will just keep running and running and running, and you will be chasing all night like we did last week. We've got to shut down these key players. Like Rosie had no impact on, or at least the second half of the game and probably a bit of the second quarter as well. He didn't really impact like he has the few weeks before. Like he's had some huge weeks. We took their run out. They took their run out of the back line. Jones had no impact out of the back line. He's been really good this year. Alir struggled down back defending. They actually they didn't let him just go take those simple marks like he's been taking, picking him off every week. They made him accountable down there. That's just those sort of little things that you just go, that's what we need to do this week too. Just simple little things you just think about and implement. We've seen the blueprint of how to beat them last week. Let's just try to do the same sort of thing, because Collingwood did it absolutely perfectly. They could see something wasn't working and just went, no, this is what we got to do to beat them. And they just put on an absolute show. And I watched bits and pieces of that, and so the pieces I saw of it, Collingwood were absolutely brilliant. And yeah, I've seen Port Adelaide the other weeks, and they've been playing some really good football. And it's the sort of thing going, hey, we've beaten Collingwood, where they weren't as good when we beat them, but still, we can beat them. We can do the kind of thing that they did last week. We've got that ability to run. We've got that ability to shut down at the same time. We've got that ability to basically make a team look second rate. But we've actually got to start doing it. We haven't done it for a few weeks now. We've maybe, in the last quarter against GWS we did, in the second half against Richmond we did, against other teams we've played a good quarter here or there. Our most complete game is against Collingwood. Mm-hmm. Still the most complete game we've played all year. And even then, we probably had patches where we weren't great. So let's at least start a game good. We called for that last week. We called for us to start the game well. Didn't even turn up. Get out there, start the game well. Actually be competitive in the first half. Then work our way after there. We've got to get a good start. And yeah, that's as simple as it is. If we fall behind if we fall behind again at quarter time or something, it's over there. They're just going to keep going, and we're not going to catch them back up. Get the crowd quiet. Get the ferals all riled up. Get them. Yeah, it's the sort of thing you're looking at and going, this could be very ugly, but it's in our hands to actually do something about it. And yeah, let's show up.
Well, Phil, this week it's an 8-day break, so there's no excuses for not being fresh and ready to go. There are likely to be changes. Obviously, Butler's an obvious out. He's going to miss 6 weeks probably, if not more. What else are you expecting in terms of ins and outs this week? Anthony in the comments asks, is it time for Jack Hayes in place of Sharman or Caminiti? Would give us that second ruck option as well. I'm not sure he's ready. He didn't look great in those couple of games we saw for Sandy a week or two ago. What do you think on the second ruck option?
So the one thing we know about Ross is that he wants players that have a tank and that can run both ways for the whole of the game. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that part of the list rebuild in the last two drafts has seen them recruit people that can run, almost Forrest Gump-like. And so I think Jack Hayes is probably a little ways away. I also think that's why there are big question marks on Max Heath when he's not injured and whether or not he's going to have a future at the club. Not because he's not seen as somebody that can mark a ball and have a bit of presence around him, but the lack of his ability to run both ways. So I think they're very happy with that structure at the moment, even if it's a little bit depleted. I think in terms of ins, as you've indicated, I think Dougal Howard comes in, especially when you've got the tools that Port Adelaide have up forward. And obviously Max King comes in if he's right. And if he's not right, that'd be clever to rest him another week in order to prepare him for North Melbourne rather than risk him slightly underdone. So I'm not sure that there's going to be a lot of other changes because they don't have the ability to, and they need to get game time into Hunter Clark and others, and Ben Patton returning through Sandy. What I reckon, I'm going to go out on a limb because I don't always tip St Kilda because it's a family tipping comp, and the bragging rights becomes more important than betting money down at the tab. So whilst you tip for dough and you cheer for show, I'm tipping St Kilda this week. I think we are a genuine chance. I think that the way the game plays out is I think we actually have a really strong start. I think we get out to an early 2 or 3 goal lead. I think they keep pegging us back. We keep getting 1 or 2 back, and it kind of stays like that for most of the night. They come back to us in the last quarter and hit us hard, and we hold on and we win in typical St Kilda fashion by less than a goal. That's my tip, and I'll either be right or I'll be wrong. But the life of a St Kilda fan is always interesting.
Well, Nakaruchi has alluded to that in the comments that they've been close games. I think Nakaruchi has said that we've led like 8 of the past 10 losses into the last quarter against Port. They have been tight games, they've been close games, and often they've just been too good in those moments that mattered. We look back at the one that sticks out in everybody's memory, the Paddy Ryder to Robbie Gray, last minute goal, the one that sticks out. But if you do have any thoughts in the comments, just feel free to drop them in as we prepare to wrap up. I do want to throw one thing to both of you. I think this conversation will get a little bit easier as that injury list subsides and we do start getting players back. But what do you make of Mateus Filippo? He's precociously talented. He's unbelievably talented. And I'm not sure whether what we're seeing from him is kind of the second year blues that we know comes from young kids in those second years. We know he's incredibly young, the youngest player in last year's draft, and is still one of the youngest players in the competition. Are we not utilizing him in the right position? I think we've seen moments from him, but certainly not the type of impact that we saw last year. H, you first. What do you make of Filippo, and what do you think we should be doing with him over the next few weeks?
Well, what do you see happen with a lot of young kids is the first year, they're unknown. They come out, they do a few things. They look pretty good. Second year, as you're saying, they drop off a little bit. Teams figure them out a little bit. An opposition player will figure them out a little bit, and they just negate them a little bit more than what they might have in the first year. They've dropped back a little bit, but that player is learning, how do I beat that? And that's when you find they come back in the next year and the year after that, few years after that sort of thing, and they get better and better and better because they sort of thing in the first year, okay, I'm doing this and I'm not getting that much attention. All of a sudden, they're getting all this attention. The good ones learn from that. And that's what we hope he's doing right now. He's learning how to beat his opposition. The opposition who has looked at him going, okay, this is what this guy does. So keep giving him games. Keep giving him games. He's only going to learn AFL level football in the AFL. He's not going to go back to the VFL and find, fantastic form and come back, and then quite often that happens and they don't go great. So I'd be keeping him in the side. He's maybe doesn't have a big role at the moment, but Ross will always have a job for him somewhere. He'll always have something for him to do, something for him to achieve on maybe a game by game basis, or just some I guess levels to reach at certain points, so he's just dropping him because he might not have had a great week or a couple of great weeks or haven't been as good as last year isn't the answer there. Keep him in the side. He's learning the game still in the way of the level he's playing. And it's better for our future for him to keep doing so because, he's, as you say, he's got that ability. He's got that footy smarts about him. He's got it all there. It's just putting it into action, and he needs the opportunity to do that.
Phil, what's your take on Filippo's season so far?
So I like a lot of what H had to say, and I'll only supplement with two thoughts. The first one is we don't quite know what is being asked of him by the coaches. We don't know whether they're saying to him, come forward, come in the middle, be on your defensive player side, and then work that player, right? So in the absence of that kind of knowledge as to is he actually doing what he's being asked to do by the coaches, it's a little bit harder to say. But, the face value is it looks like he's having a slightly lower output this season than what he was in his first season for all the reasons that H said. And I think that he's probably learning a lot more from being in these games than what he would if he was playing down at Sandy. That's not a reason to give a kid a game without foundation, but it is a reason to give a kid a game if it's going to mean that he's going to be a much better player for us next year than what he is this year. Speaking of next year, we're all eagerly awaiting news from the club that he is re-signing for the next couple of years. Of course, he's the only top 10 draft pick from his draft that is yet to sign an extension of contract, but the club has been at pains to say publicly that they're comfortable with where it's at, that Philippou's management is comfortable with where it's at, so we can only take them on face value. But the one thing I'll say about what Philippou did a couple of weeks ago, and this will lead into my pet hate, and I'm going to come off the long run on this. Philippou, Caminetti, and others, you are very good kicks of the football. So look at me right now. Stop this fucking absolute rancid nonsense of kicking around the body 20 metres out from goal on a 45-degree angle. Caminetti did it last week, against GWS. It cost us a goal. He was 15 metres out from goal on a 45-degree angle, and we lost by a point. Philippou did it earlier in the season, which is what reminded me to come off the long run. Stop doing it. Max King, you are a beautiful shot when you kick through the ball. Stop doing this nonsense. The only one that I won't is Jack Higgins, because every time he has a set shot from 35 out with a drop punt, I put my hands over my eyes and I start praying to the football gods. Jack, do whatever you think you can do to get the goal. But for everybody else, stop doing it. It is nonsense. Done. Rant over.
No, perfectly said. I think I said something very similar last week, Phil, and I completely agree with you. It is infuriating to watch.
Well, we can't both be wrong.
Well, I mean, plenty of people would say that both of us are quite often wrong. It's not usually that we're both wrong when we're in agreement with each other. That's the odd one. But a couple of comments late coming through. Nakaruchi, OMFG, let's kick drop punts our entire junior career, and you make it to the AFL level and you think you can kick all this around the corner. Bulltish, completely agree. Stuart McIntyre, Max with spinning the ball, surely that's not needed. Again, completely agree. And yeah, one of the frustrating things is there have been so many people willing to help A, Max, but B, the club with this stuff. And, for whatever reason, and we've heard different variations of multiple excuses and justifications and too many cooks and all these sorts of things. The club needs help in this perspective. We've been awful at it for 20 years. Even when we were a great side, we were awful at this. And there's something has changed within the AFL, and we are one of the worst at it in terms of conversion inside 50 and converting entries into score. And it's just so hard to watch. It is so hard to watch and deal with, especially when everyone who's kicked a footy in the backyard can see where the issues are. And not to say everybody's an expert, but there are some basic fundamentals that we've all learnt literally watching the footy through the 70s, 80s, the 40s, maybe for you, Phil, about how to kick a ball straight and what to do. And so many players just don't do it these days. And there's 100 years of history on how to kick a Sharon, how to kick a football. And I don't understand it. One from Tim D off the socials. Is there a world where Tom Campbell plays and Rowan Marshall is played as a hybrid forward midfield like Owens was last year as a backup ruck? Both of you shaking your head?
No, won't happen. As we're saying, it's more likely that Hayes comes in and plays relief ruck role. And I don't see, unless Marshall has a rest or something or gets injured or that, I don't really see Campbell coming in. It's just not how teams go in now. I mean, there's no, unless you've got two almost top line ruckmen in there, they're kind of not. No one's playing two ruckmen anymore. So
I think the only way you play
out.
two ruck is if Hayes is good to go and Hayes is in. But I think Campbell only comes in if Marshall is out. Really, I think is
that's basically
the only way that
straightforward as is. Yep.
And can we just add to that we're not denigrating Campbell by giving that response.
No.
There's a reason that he is one of the most loved players at the club. There's a reason that he continually gets voted as best clubman. And the fact that he understands that his role is there as second banana to Rowan Marshall, and he's happy to play his role for the club without complaining, without denigrating the coaches, the staff, or the players around him, is to his eternal credit. Again, you've seen in Fremantle what happens when you play two ruckmen and they can't get it right and it doesn't work. So if Hayes comes in, as H said, it's because he comes in as a forward and then does relief in the ruck, which is no different from what Caminetti's been doing or what Mitch Owen's been doing. And, you don't rob Peter to pay Paul. And we also all hope for the sake of our team and our aspirations that Rowe doesn't get injured this year. But if he does, let's be also honest, Tom Campbell, when he comes in, will do a good job for us. But there's just not the room in the game plan to have two ruckmen on the bench at the one time.
Yeah, I would agree with pretty much all of that. And like you said, all credit to Tom. He knows his role and he does it, without complaint week after week after week. So often he's an emergency because, you need to have someone there just in case. You're right. He is voted as best clubman and that type of leader within the four walls continually because of those things. Yeah. And I think he's a really good person to have around the footy club.
Yeah. He's putting in that effort down at Sandy. So he's ready if he needs to step in. I mean, he could be just going, I'm second ruck, not going to get a game, etc. I'll just have a wander around Trevor Barker Oval and get a kick here and there. But no, he's putting in the effort. He's putting the yards down there to be ready just in case he is needed. And yeah, you wouldn't want anything less or anything more from a player in that situation.
Yep, that's right. That So St Kilda is something that we've done sporadically this season. I would suggest that our performance last week was So St Kilda. I'm not sure if you guys have anything to add in terms of that this week.
No, my Adelaide view, again, I guess.
Yeah, well, my view, I think I said this to you on text, Nick, and for the record, you guys know that I'm not a big fan of that So St Kilda. I think it's self-defeating, but nevertheless, after Port Adelaide lost to Collingwood, I think I wrote to Nick and said, that's So St Kilda. The week before we play Port Adelaide in Adelaide, they then lose and get their backsides handed to them by Collingwood with a view that they want to come out firing this week, and it happens to be against us. But even with that, I still think we can win.
Very good. Very good. H, any final thoughts on that one?
Yeah, as I said, we're just off to Port as our annual trip. I think I saw a thing last week ago where the last time teams have played at certain venues and that sort of stuff. You've got teams that haven't played somewhere for 10 years. You've got teams that haven't played somewhere for like 15 years. Collingwood hasn't been to Geelong for 25 years. And yeah, but Port, guaranteed we go there every year. So yeah, it's our annual trip.
Yeah, hopefully they're up for it this week. Just to finish off, we had a really good response to this, both in the comments last week and across the socials since we brought it up. Phil, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the potential to have a live podcast event at a venue potentially in the bye week. What do you think of the idea? Would you come? Would you take part? Would you come and have a chat and speak into a microphone? I know you're a bit gun shy when it comes to to speaking in public, but would you come and have a chat? And B, do you know any venues? You're a well-travelled man around the suburbs of Melbourne and this part of Melbourne. Any thoughts on a venue?
Yeah, well, I mean, we should try and set up for Hotel Brighton. They're great supporters of the football club down Bayside Way, but there are a lot of good venues that we could choose. They've also got an upstairs that could accommodate what would be an absolutely overflowing crowd that would come to see us talk football. I'd be delighted to participate, but I'd also be just delighted to just attend and support you two and Parko if he's back at the mic.
H, you still feeling positive about a live night?
Yeah, I was going to say, if anyone out there listening works at a venue or knows someone with the venue or something like that, yeah, throw a name at us. But Phil, practicing your juggling or halftime entertainment for us, but see how you go there.
Listen, I've been juggling for 20 years with 3 kids and a wife, so I think I've got that one covered. It's more likely that my children will have more to say at a live venue, so we might have to have a slight delay on the broadcast.
All love to the Dalidakis family, wonderful people. We might actually hold the podcast maybe in your backyard, Phil, out with the barbecue and a couple of beers. You can tell some stories there.
I would be delighted to cook for everybody, even if I'm not on the pod myself.
Wonderful. To finish up, obviously, if you do listen to the podcast and you like the podcast, give us a rating and a review wherever that is, iTunes, Spotify, Facebook, wherever it is. Give us a follow on all the socials. We're on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We are on LinkedIn, funnily enough, on YouTube, obviously, if you're watching tonight. And if you're not, jump on board and hopefully you can be there for the next live event. Any final thoughts from you two?
Show up. Let's just show up this week. That's all we're going to do.
He says show up. I'm going to say show off. Let's show off and let's get our season back on track. And regards to Mr. and Mrs. Parkin.
Well said. Thanks, everyone, for joining tonight, and we'll see you soon. Go Saints.